History is a topic which is difficult to capture accurately due to the sheer number of events at both macro and micro levels. While we learn much about the large-scale events in AP Euro this year, first-hand perspectives from the points of view of individuals were not as extensively covered. In order to learn more about this microscopic aspect of history, I interviewed my great-grandmother, Marilee Scaff, who, born in 1915, witnessed many of the major events of the 20th century. In this short documentary, I will go chronologically through major events in Europe during the 20th century and link them to Marilee's own personal actions and experiences. We begin with the end of World War I in 1918.
We, myself and cousin Sterling Wheeler, who was just younger than I, were standing on the curb waving little flags which had been given us, while a brass band and lines of men came marching down the street and everyone was shouting and clapping. And I remember this very distinctly. I asked my mother why all this was going on, and she said people were happy because the war was over.
Marilee continued growing up in Yuma throughout the 20s, and, at the request of her mother, who had herself obtained a college education, went to school with a major in sociology and a minor in economics. Her mother had made a special effort to obtaining an education for Marilee because of the Great Depression, which had begun in 1929 when Marilee was just 14 years old.
I did know one girl who was the daughter of a judge, and they were relatively better off than others, but they were helping family members who were not well off, so it was a hard time.
Fast forward to World War II, just after Japan had entered the war on the side of the Axis powers in 1940. By this time, Marilee had married my grandfather, Alvin. They went to the Philippines in order to aid local communities there and to work alongside the locals in order to promote education, peace, and ease tensions. After only a short time working in the Philippines, an invading force of Japanese soldiers arrived on their island, demanding that all citizens turn themselves in. Marilee, having just given birth to my great-uncle, Lawrence, had no wish to spend the first months with her son in a war camp, so the family of 3 left for the rainforest. After a couple of months, however, they were captured.
Then one morning at 6 o'clock, they were outside our door. That was that. And it was clear, we've been captured. And then they took us over to Bacolod, where we were in a military jail. That's not so good. And there were funny little details, but that one was pretty wacky that time. It was very crowded, by which I mean there were 30 women and children to one classroom. And you could sleep on the floor, but you didn't have room enough for a double bed mattress this size because you were not given that much space. It had to be narrower than that, or else you intruded upon somebody else's.
Soon after American fleets arrived in the Philippines in August of 1945, Marilee and her family were safely taken back home. They continued to live their lives as normal, and both Alvin and Marilee became university professors. The 60s and 70s marked a couple of the major decades for the feminist movement. Marilee, as a member of a largely female, very educated family, had a unique perspective on the feminist movement. I read this from a small autobiography she did recently, as we did not touch on this topic in the interview. You know, am I a feminist? Indeed. In fact, what did I think when it first got going? I thought, well, they're finally coming around and recognizing what the issues are. Because it wasn't that there weren't already people doing it, but there wasn't a movement, and I thought the movement was a good thing. Marilee's testimony is particularly unique in that she argues that the second wave of feminism was less about raising new issues and was more about discovering issues that were already there. The final topic was particularly intriguing: the Cold War. Marilee, who had already been on the humanitarian mission in the Philippines during World War II, went with her husband to Russia during the 1970s in order to ease tensions between the 2 nuclear superpowers. Luckily, they were not captured this time. Her perspective on the Cold War is truly unique.
Russia was our friend. There wasn't any Cold War. Well, that should be a shock to you, because we now act as if it's so miserable if anybody talked to the Russians.
While her perspective isn't entirely accurate, she makes the point that the Cold War was more of an ideological conflict between a few leaders rather than a total war, as World War II had been. History is an extremely complicated web of large-scale political, economic, artistic, and intellectual movements and events, and one aspect of it that is often overlooked is the experience of individuals during these events. I hope you enjoyed my great-grandmother's contribution to this aspect of history, and thank you for watching.